Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping straight into the early days of Donald Trump's presidency, specifically how the public felt about him in that very first month looking at his approval ratings.
Yeah, that initial period is always fascinating, a real crucible.
Exactly. And we're using a transcript from a YouTube video by The Ring of Fire as our source. They dug into some early polling data from YouGov and CBS.
Interesting combination there.
Right. So our goal here is basically to map out those early approval trends, see if there were any, weird spikes or dips, and try to understand why people's opinions might have shifted so early on.
It's all about getting behind those numbers, understanding the dynamics at play right after the election dust settles. Public mood can swing pretty fast then.
Okay, so let's kick off with where he started. The transcript says Trump came into office with a 49% approval rating. Now, the source points out, okay, not a majority, but it was actually his highest ever starting point. Put him above water, so to speak. That 49%, it's significant. It suggests, a country pretty much split down the middle, maybe some cautious optimism, some definite skepticism right from day one.
But then things got a little strange. About 3 weeks in, one poll, this CBS YouGov one, showed his approval jumping up to 53%.
Whoa, okay. That's a noticeable jump.
Yeah, and the reaction in the transcript we're looking at was basically, holy crap, people liked him more after 3 weeks. That seemed weird then, didn't it? Maybe an outlier?
Oh, that's the immediate question, isn't it? A 5-point jump in just a few weeks, especially early on, you have to wonder what drove that or if it was even, real.
And spoiler alert, as we look at the other data points, that initial gut reaction in the transcript seems like it was probably right on the money.
Yeah, that 53%, it does stick out like a sore thumb when you line it up with other polls from around that same time. It really hammers home that point. Never hang your hat on just one poll.
Definitely. Which brings us to how quickly that high number seemed to, evaporate.
Because the transcript notes that just days later, another YouGov poll, this one from February 2nd to 4th, had his approval back down at 46%, disapproval at 44%. So almost back to where he started.
Okay, so that 53% was looking shaky pretty quickly.
And even before that weird spike, if you look at the YouGov poll from the 2 weeks before mid-February, so late January, early February, approval was 49%, disapproval 43%. So, already a slight downward nudge even before the big drop.
Absolutely. You see that progression started. Okay, then this one poll spikes, then it immediately corrects back down, maybe even a bit lower. That volatility is key.
And it gets clearer in the next YouGov poll mentioned from February 9th to 11th. Approval, still 46%, but disapproval had climbed to 48%.
So that's the crossover point.
Exactly. The source highlights that more people disapproving than approving. He was, as they put it, officially underwater.
Right. So that initial 49%, that brief flicker of 53%, it was gone within the month. The overall picture is one of decline, not ascent.
And the transcript really hammers this home about the 53% being an anomaly. It points out that even with that poll, the average of polls at the polling aggregates, they were still showing him around that initial 49% mark.
That's crucial context. Aggregates smooth out the noise from individual polls. If the average wasn't reflecting that 53%, it strongly suggests it was indeed an outlier.
And here's a kicker. The transcript actually says YouGov and CBS themselves kind of acknowledged the 53% poll was an outlier.
Wow. Okay. That is significant. When the pollsters themselves flag a result as unusual.
Yeah, it adds a lot of weight. The transcript even sort of speculates, could CBS's involvement have skewed it somehow? Though, that's hard to prove.
It definitely raises those perennial questions about polling methodology, house effects, all that. But the main point remains. The trend across multiple polls, including YouGov's own data before and after, didn't back up that 53%.
Right, and that's such a vital lesson, isn't it? Especially as the source notes, thinking about more recent election polling drama, individual polls can be blips.
Exactly. It's the pattern, the consistent direction over time that tells the real story.
Yeah.
You have to look at the forest, not just one slightly unusual tree.
And for Trump's first month, that pattern, that forest, was showing a clear downward slope for approval and an upward one for disapproval.
So naturally, we ask, why? What was happening in those first few weeks that might have soured the public mood so quickly?
Well, the source offers a few ideas. One is simply people were paying attention. It's a new president. The spotlight is intense, maybe more intense than usual.
That makes sense. Honeymoons, if they happen, are often short. Every early move, every statement, every appointment is scrutinized heavily. People are forming judgments fast.
Another big one the transcript flags is the economy. Specifically, it mentions rising prices at the grocery store, something really tangible.
The kitchen table issues, those
Oh,
always hit home. If people are feeling squeezed in their daily lives, seeing prices go up for essentials, well, that's going to affect how they feel about the person in charge, regardless of who it is. It's immediate, it's personal. If there were reports, say, of milk or bread prices ticking up noticeably, that gets felt.
and that links straight into another point. Promises made versus reality. The transcript reminds us Trump campaigned hard on bringing prices down, like day one.
Right, a very specific promise.
So if people are seeing prices go up instead, and the source even mentions talk of rising unemployment or inflation figures early on, well, that looks like a broken promise, right?
Absolutely. That gap between rhetoric and reality can be politically damaging, especially early on. Voters have long memories for those big, bold promises. If the trend seems to be going the wrong way right after you take office, it erodes trust quickly.
So putting it all together, this early negative trend,
Mm.
what could it mean longer term? The source hints that if this continued, it wouldn't have been great for the Republican Party.
No, definitely not. A president starting underwater and sinking lower. That weakens their mandate, makes it harder to pass legislation, potentially energizes the opposition, and could signal trouble for their party in upcoming elections like the midterms. It creates political headwinds.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Our deep dive suggests Trump started with his best ever initial approval, just over 49%, but that didn't hold.
Hmm.
A brief spike to 53% in one poll looks very much like an outlier, not backed up by other data or even the pollsters themselves, apparently.
Right, an anomaly.
The real story of that first month seems to be a clear trend. Approval going down, disapproval going up, and potential reasons, people paying close attention, and maybe more importantly, economic worries like rising prices hitting home, contrasting sharply with campaign promises.
Exactly. The key takeaway is how fluid those early days are and how crucial trends are over single data points. That initial goodwill or even just tolerance can vanish fast if reality doesn't match expectations. The trend here was clearly negative.
Which leaves us with something to think about. What does this incredibly rapid shift just within 1 month tell us about what really moves the needle on presidential approval right at the start? And maybe, looking beyond polls, what other early signs, actions, appointments, even just the tone from the White House might hint at whether that initial support will stick or fade.